Welcome to our World News Update for February 24th, 2023. There is so much going on in the world these days. So, let's get right to it. Division continues to worsen in Israel as protests keep growing throughout the country. It's gotten to the point where even the words civil war was loosely spoken from Israeli President Isaac Herzog. Now, while that may sound impossible, the division has grown so much that now even the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, are reporting many soldiers are refusing to serve, and many more in the reservists. As noted from The Guardian, growing numbers of Israel's military reservists, including members of its most important Air Force squadron, are refusing to attend for service. An unprecedented step that comes as part of the protest movement against the country's new far-right government. The F-15I pilots are a strategically crucial squadron capable of flying long-range missions, raising immediate questions about the Israeli Defense Forces' operational competence. Security officials are reportedly also worried about refusals to obey orders and insubordination within the serving military's ranks as opposition to plans by the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to limit the judiciary powers increases across swaths of Israeli society. This extreme division within the borders of Israel all stem from what's being dubbed as a judicial overhaul. Now, without getting into the details, an oversimplified way of saying it would be they're basically weakening their Supreme Court while giving more power to the Knesset, their government. I believe it's important to note this has all been escalating since January and now intensifying right up to the point of the Hebrew New Year, which begins in tandem with Ramadan. Reports have shown that much of Islam is watching this growing chaos in Israel take place from the sidelines. Let that sink in. And Israel isn't helping in the relations with Islamic countries. In fact, just this week, the Knesset okayed the repeal of the disengagement law for northern West Bank in a 31-18 final vote. So, what does the repeal of disengagement law actually do? As reported from the Jerusalem Post, the repeal of the disengagement law only lifts the ban on Israeli citizens entering the area. It does not automatically approve the reestablishment of the 4 evacuated settlements. The status of the land will now be like the rest of Area C, meaning that any further restrictions or permits for building will fall to the IDF and the government. Later in the report, we read, on Wednesday, after a diplomatic uproar, the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed that the government does not intend to establish new settlements in northern Samaria, adding that the nullification of the law was meant to end a discriminatory and humiliating law banning Jews from living in northern Samaria. While Netanyahu made this declaration on Wednesday to ease tensions received from around the world, I don't believe the intent was just to stop discrimination and humiliation to the Jews. As reported from Times of Israel, Yuli Edelstein of the Likud Party, who sponsored the bill, celebrated its passage in the final votes early Tuesday, saying, "The state of Israel tonight began its recovery process from the deportation disaster," referring to the thousands of Israelis forced out of their homes in settlements across Gaza and the northern West Bank. This is the first and significant step towards real healing and settlement in Israel's homeland territories, which belong to it. In my opinion, there's the goal of this repeal. But this isn't the only thing that's causing tensions toward Israel from the Islamic world. On Sunday, Finance Minister Smotrich added fuel to the fire by dismissing the existence of the Palestinian people in a speech delivered in Paris. Smotrich said, "There is no such thing as Palestinians because there is no such thing as a Palestinian people." Reported in Times of Israel. On Sunday, in Hebrew remarks translated into French for the audience, Smotrich said, "The Palestinian people are an invention of less than 100 years ago. Is there a Palestinian history or culture? No. There were Arabs in the Middle East who arrived in the land of Israel at the same time as the Jewish immigration and the beginning of Zionism. After 2,000 years of exile, the people of Israel were returning home, and there were Arabs around who do not like it. So, what do? They invent a fictitious people in the land of Israel and claim fictitious rights in the land of Israel just to fight the Zionist movement." Now, whether one agrees or disagrees with Smotrich, surely he knew these words would only stir the Islamic world. Plus, he said these words while standing behind a podium that had a flag showing all of Gaza, the Golan Heights, and the state of Jordan as part of Israel. Again, agree or disagree, he had to know this was going to cause friction around the world. And it did just that. The next day, Jordan expelled the ambassador of Israel from its state. So, yeah, Israel is doing a good job at isolating itself from the world, all the while falling apart within. Now, many were in an uproar over a new law being presented that would make it illegal to spread the gospel of Yeshua in Israel. First, we need to understand this is nothing new. This has been presented to every Knesset for years. This new law would include 1 year imprisonment or 2 years imprisonment if witnessing to a minor. So yeah, that's the new element. Netanyahu, though, told the Christian community in Israel and abroad he wouldn't allow this to happen, and the bill has once again been tabled. But this is my concern. I heard a Christian Jew who has his own channel actually say such a bill would never pass in Israel. Never. Now, folks, I'm here to tell you, it will happen. One day, it will happen. Remember, the bill has just been tabled. It doesn't mean it can't be brought back up for a vote. When the Antichrist rules from Jerusalem, it will happen again. Please consider our teachings, the Antichrist, and beware of the Noahide laws. While much has transpired over recent weeks in Israel, and still continue to do so, a major event took place this week with hardly anyone batting an eye at it. What was it? The peace accord between Iran and Saudi Arabia. While this may seem like a small event, it's actually quite huge. These countries represent the two largest of the Sunni and Shiite Muslim nations, Iran being mainly Shiite and Saudi Arabia mainly Sunni, the two factions of Islam that have been at odds with each other for who knows how long. With these two countries coming together, this will help broker peace between Sunnis and Shiites around the world. So, what are we seeing? While the state of Israel is falling apart and creating friction with the surrounding Islamic nations, those Islamic nations are uniting. Plus, it's interesting to note how it was China who actually brokered this deal. China's been playing a major role in world politics lately. In fact, over the recent year, Saudi Arabia has been looking into doing its oil trades in China's currency, the yuan. If this takes place, it will be a huge impact to the U.S. dollar. It's also been rumored that Saudi Arabia and Iran will be joining the BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, and China. If these two nations joins the BRICS alliance, this would put all the largest oil-producing countries in the same alliance. Now, in case you don't see the writing on the wall, the U.S. is being ushered to the back of the room. But the people of the U.S. aren't paying attention. It's as if the world stage is preparing for a world without the U.S. Now, on that note, as headlined in War News 24/7, the Putin and Xi Jinping deal kills the petrodollar, paving the way for the yuan to be the new global reserve currency for the energy market. The petro-yuan is born. Xi Jinping says changes are coming that haven't happened in 100 years. In other words, changes going back to pre-World War I. Plus, this happened with military advisors in the room. So, just what all was being discussed with China behind closed doors in Russia? Now, we all know things aren't looking good for the banking system, or the financial institution as a whole for that matter. However, I'm not covering that this time around. There's so much being reported on it from all angles at this time. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what's coming, as the U.S. debt ceiling will be reached again this coming July, which happens to be the same time the Fed is planning on rolling out the Fed Now program. They present it as something that will be great, but who is it ultimately great for? Please do the research on Fed Now. Glenn Beck did a short video on it and gives the details needed, linked in the description. As I've said, the world is changing, and changing very fast. We need to keep our hearts and eyes open as time continues to unfold before us, and be ready should a need arise. As always, we don't know the future, but we know the one who does. So, let's make it a point to pray as we walk through our everyday routines. Make more time to read. Make it a point to invest more time into your relationship with our Heavenly Father like never before. That way, regardless of what lies ahead, we know we're in good company. Keep your hearts humble in Him as we all learn and grow together in His Word. Blessings and shalom.